welcome to Focus on B, the video series where I spent about 20 or so minutes playing a game that I've got some thoughts on. This is Cruis'n USA. No, I'm not kidding. And also, we're going to be doing not just Cruis'n USA, we're doing every Cruis'n game on the N64, but there's only 3 of them, I think. We're doing Cruis'n USA, Cruis'n World, with the actually really good intro sequence, to be honest. I really like the notes that they choose. And Cruis'n Exotica. I'm actually using a different video plugin. I don't like to talk shop this much, but yeah. So you know how like Project 64, my real N64, has different graphic settings and like plugins you can use? Well, typically only one of them is like really the best one. I think it's the Glide one. Here, I have to use the like built-in Project 64 free point whatever one, because Exotica is like, no. So I have to use that one. But anyway, that's why the game will look a little bit different. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So what kind of game is this? This is clearly an arcade racer. And I don't think calling it an arcade racer is even all that accurate. I think a more fitting description is coin-op racer. Because when you think like arcade racer, you think Need for Speed, you think maybe Top Gear Overdrive, if you're talking specifically N64, or maybe you think Forza Horizon, not Motorsport, but Horizon, you think Burnout. Then you have simulation racers, and you know those. And then you have this. This is an Outrun, and honestly, this shit makes Top Gear 2 and 3000 on actually all the Top Gear games on the Super Nintendo look like Gran Turismo. They make them look like freaking Assetto Corsa in comparison. Am I the only one who gets a little bit creeped out by that? I mean, like that constant looping animation and the music. Why do they have to go so minor key? Like, it sounds like a metal song at that point with the guitars and stuff. Speaking of which, I don't think the soundtrack is like absolutely abysmal or anything. It's just so fucking strange. There's a couple decent compositions in here. Like, I don't even hate the cheesy ass singing at the start. It's like Cruis'n, yeah, that kind of shit. It's pretty typical for the time. In fact, this song, I don't fucking understand it because it's just these weird-ass vocal samples. You can change the music at any time, though, so that's pretty cool. But anyway, here's the thing. When I play this game, sometimes, specifically the first one of all of them, I get, like, weirdly uncomfortable because of the pace at which it moves. Because, when you're at an actual arcade, because I remember arcades, these still are a thing, but, when you're at an arcade and everything's just so loud and there's all these, like, bright lights and it's like this weird forced energy that feels really unnerving and horrifying. Like, you're constantly rushed to make a decision. You know how arcade games will do that? They'll put a timer on every single choice you make just to get you fucking playing the game. And I don't know, like, this game doesn't actually do that, though. You can just sit at the menu screen all you want, which is nice, obviously. Because some arcade conversions will actually not do that. They will genuinely pretend that they still are arcade games and just force you to like make choices really quickly. But anyway, I don't know. For some reason, I've always found that really unnerving. It's not that much the case in this game because, again, a lot of that arcadiness has been stripped out. And you know what's really strange about the way this game plays? That even though clearly I can tell visually it's like a proper 3D game, it feels like... Well, okay, so you know the original Need for Speed and the way its engine worked? It's kind of like that, except even faster and actually a little bit more controllable, a little more fun. This is basically, again, an Outrun style game. Like, you don't have that much control over what's going on. You can obviously let go of the accelerator, sure, and the games elaborate upon certain mechanics later on, which we will certainly pay attention to. In fact, it's almost time to... would I say it's almost time to switch? No, let's do one more race here, then we'll switch over to Cruis'n World, which I actually quite enjoy a lot more. I don't think this game is like absolute garbage like a lot of reviewers said at the time. It's just a simple arcade conversion, but I do think that like if this shit costs full price, and I mean like $60 when it came out, yeah, that is an absolute crime against the universe to charge that much money for a game like this. Right, considering that you can literally make one of these in like 5 seconds nowadays with the tools that we have. But other than that, it's actually not too unenjoyable. This is one of the better compositions. It's just a very standard little minor key thing. It's fun. And for the longest time, I used to think that this game genuinely had the rights to Ferrari. This isn't a real Ferrari. It clearly looks like one, but it's actually not. So the replay value in this game is basically non-existent, and that's the thing. That's why it's so hard for these games to kind of last a long time. Apart from maybe setting best times, but who really cares? I don't know. Yeah, well, what's interesting is that there's this very obvious split in what is arcade and what is an arcade game, if that makes sense, because this is more of an arcade game than an arcade racer. Again, when you think arcade racer, it's like, okay, you think Flat Out 2 or whatever. They all have their gimmicks, right? There is no gimmick here. It's just kind of you're going forward and you turn left. Also, fun fact, if you use the D-pad instead, the controls become a little less sensitive, but the problem is the turns in this game are clearly intended to be done using the fucking analog stick. Also, every time I hear this theme, I keep thinking of the Drake and Josh theme song. I keep just going like, in my head, I'm like, it'd be so simple, but I found a way. You know what I mean? It sounds a little bit like that, I'm not gonna lie. But anyway, I don't know. These kind of games just feel... like, you know, the music in the first track is like so distinctly N64 and yet not at the same time. I don't really understand, but whatever. I still hate that animation. We're gonna move on to Cruis'n World now.
Ready, set, go!
You know, gotta give them credit for basically having no loading times. That is the completely undisputed advantage of the N64. But anyway, this is Cruis'n World now, the sequel released, well, I think the arcades came out in 96, then they ported it over 2 years later. Why did it take them so long? Seriously. Were they trying to see if it was successful enough? So right off the bat, what are we seeing? Some major improvements in the aesthetics. The game looks so much more rich and colorful. The menus, I mean, the HUD elements look a little bit nicer. The sound is much better. And the soundtrack is actually kind of okay. Again, I didn't play you the opening sequence, but it's genuine. You can look it up really easily. It's actually really well sung, and the quality is scarily good for N64. Because, you know, the N64 is infamous for kind of having to squish audio, hence why you don't hear a lot of voices and, you know, dialogue and stuff at N64, but it actually sounds pretty good here. I mean, I'm guessing, I bet that like most of the cartridge size was taken up by that. Kind of like how, you know, how the Sega logo in Sonic 1 is like most of the cartridge. Also, they introduced a new mechanic in this one. Double tap the accelerator and you go like this. Thing is, I can't actually tell if it makes you go any faster because look at my speedometer. I actually slow down. What the hell? Look at this. I go a little bit slower. It just makes the camera zoom out as if I'm going faster. You can also go on two wheels. Let me see if I can pull it off consistently. Yeah, you can. That would become a mechanic in the frickin' Cars 2 video game, which is actually a pretty damn good game, weirdly enough. So with this game, I don't really get that kind of unnerving arcade racer sort of energy, which I appreciate that, of course. Like, it doesn't creep me out in that same way. Fun fact, there's actually a little thing that pops up, like this chick fucking doing that thing where she's holding the trophy, she squeezes her tits together to make them look bigger, you know, that thing. Yeah, I forgot to turn that on in the menu. I was just rushing through, but yeah, you have to specifically enable that in the menu. I'm gonna assume that was Nintendo going like, no, we may be Japanese where we have manga with the weirdest shit, but Breed's bad. So anyway, but as for the gameplay itself, I mean, it's exact fucking same. Like, there's really nothing much more to say here. In fact, I'm probably going to end up really fucking struggling when I get to Cruis'n Exotica because that game is almost the same. Although that game hasn't... Well, I'll get to that when I get to it. As you can see, the level of detail overall in the actual tracks has definitely increased. Oh yeah, I forgot. That's kind of a thing in this game. What I just did there, you can, like, bounce off of your opponents. Yeah, they elaborate upon that in the next game. They turn it into, like, a full-on mechanic. But other than that, there's really not too much different. But I do have to say there is kind of like, even though there's almost no objectively great qualities about a game like this that you really want to spend time with when there's much better on even the same system. I mean, let me put this into perspective. This game came out the exact same year as Gran Turismo on the PS1, and it also came out a year It came out a year after F1 World Grand Prix, I think. That was 97, right? So, really puts things into perspective that, like, this kind of game was able to still exist. And what's funny is these games got completely fucking murdered in their reviews. Like, seriously, Nintendo Power and stuff, like Nintendo Magazine and even, like, all other outlets, they fucking trashed these games. And yet people still bought them. Or at least enough people bought them too. I'm gonna fucking fail this, aren't I? Hard luck. Yeah, you should eat ass. All right. No, I'm going to keep playing this one just so that we can see. Okay, what's it going to do? I know what's going to happen. I'm going to have to play through the section again. That's okay. We'll play through one more time, and then we'll do another one, and then we'll move on to Cruis'n Exotica, because that one's actually really cool. And I got a lot of things to say about it. But either way, see, do you see why it becomes increasingly difficult as the level of complexity of a game decreases to come up with something interesting to say over it, considering that, I mean, there's not much going on. That is kind of fun, though. Although I'm not sure what they mean by 1 second exactly. Maybe, oh, duh. There's a freaking, yeah, the checkpoints. That's a really high-quality drum sample, by the way, that plays. Every time you do a flip, you get 1 second back on your timer. I completely forgot about the whole checkpoint thing. It feels kind of unnecessary in this game, though, because you're kind of on rails. Like, you're just... It's really weird how this game feels to play. Because even though I understand that I'm pretty sure the game isn't designed that way, like how it would be back in the Super Nintendo days, it still feels like it's on rails. Like, I still feel as if if I were not to hold whatever button I have to hold to go in that direction, I would still do that, you know? Like, as if right now, if I just hold the accelerator and nothing else, my car would just be glued to the correct path. I don't think it definitely doesn't do that, but it almost feels like it would with just how grippy these cars are. And again, interestingly enough, you actually lose speed when you do that. I really shouldn't be doing it then, because you do lose speed. I just gotta get at least one more position and be able to move on to another stage. Well, let's do a flip. It didn't fucking work. The timing's a little bit finicky on that. It is really funny though when the AI crashes into things. Come on, overtake one more bastard. There you go, second place. And I do like how even though they reused one of the female models, they actually got a totally new like dude to just go like, yeah, with his shirt off. I find that really funny because it's just the epitome of like the year 1999. Well, actually, this game came out. I don't know why, but what's up with like this obsession with 1999? I don't know. We're gonna do one more race, then we'll move on to Cruis'n Exotica, and that'll be the end of this episode of Focus on B. But anyway, the Australia stage is actually really nice. I've always loved the way it's depicted in a lot of games when it's just super saturated and bright. Even though it can be a little bit difficult on the eyes, but I can't deny that it does add a sense of, I don't know, like a warmth, obviously, where I've actually been developing a top-down racer, which is probably complete by the time you're seeing this video. In fact, I might have already done a video on it, promoting it or something like that. And I'm actually really struggling to get the right shade of whatever color I want in the backgrounds to not be bland, but to also not be abrasive. I don't want it to stick out too much. You know, it's a really, really fine balance you gotta walk when you're picking colors like that, especially since it's top down and things are moving very quickly. I was actually considering using a parallax effect to make the background not move, but that looked really unnatural and it made it seem as if you were flying above the track, which looked kind of weird, so I decided not to do that. I don't know. I do like how these are just so obviously PNGs, and I feel like me playing this game at a higher resolution almost doesn't do it justice, if that makes sense, because, I don't know, there's always this weird, like, this fine line you have to walk when you're playing old games like this with modern enhancements, because on one hand, it's like, it is nice to see these games so crisp, but at the same time, a lot of these assets were not meant to be seen so crisp, and so I'll continue that train of thought with the next one, alright? See you Cruis'n Exotica.
Ready, set, go!
Well, that was abrupt. Ready, set, and it's instantly placed. I don't know what the hell happened with that. Mars or bust. That's funny. Anyway, this is Cruis'n Exotica, the final game on the N64 in this series, released in the year 2000, I'm pretty sure. Although I imagine that means that the arcade game was either 97 or 98 or 99. Ooh, look at the lens flare. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, the whole playing these games at higher resolutions. Like on one hand, it's nice and crisp. On the other hand, it's like, yeah, you can kind of tell these games are not meant to be seen like that. But I think overall the clarity is a worthy trade-off. But anyway, this game you can clearly tell was rebuilt with a different engine. Like look at this. I mean, maybe not a different engine completely, but you got like a actual person in the car moving around Need for Speed High Stakes style. They must have seen that and been like, oh shit. A lot of the sound effects are actually reused, and for some reason the music in this one is really unclear. Like it's super, like it sounds distinctly N64. When the other ones didn't, they sounded a lot clearer actually. I don't know what the fuck happened there. Like maybe they were, okay, maybe they sacrificed the sound a little bit to fit better textures, because yes, the texture quality definitely looks better here, and there's more cars. There's a lot more content. It's weird to call this like such a feature rich, I guess. Well, not really, but it has like the challenge mode and everything. Like it's a more fleshed out coin op. Again, I'm not calling this an arcade racer. It's an arcade game. It's a coin op racer, right? This is a straight up like port of a game just there for the quarters. It's not really this game makes Burnout Free look like Assetto Corsa or iRacing or it's R Factor iRacing. That's how it goes. So anyway, what's so different about this other than the obviously rebuilt assets? I mean, not rebuilt assets, but the engine does feel a little bit different to play.
I love Atlantis.
God, I fucking hate that sound. I hate the sound of like when a lot of games from this time they would have like the voices that sound like they're just, I don't know, they're so vapid. I can't think of the right word. Those sharks are like the highest resolution thing I've seen in this whole fucking game. I mean, obviously they're going to be high resolution, they're rendered in real time, but like, look at those whales. They're like weirdly high detail. They truly must have sacrificed the sound quality for the sake of better textures, because they look a lot better. Also the camera, I just noticed, the camera is dynamic. Really, if you're actually unironically thinking of spending some time with a Cruis'n game of all things, this one's definitely the way to go, because it feels the most polished and fleshed out. And it's very detailed, really. I mean, the pop-in is still fucking terrible, but at least it doesn't run that badly, right? I mean, clearly it's not running at 60. Me rendering this video at 30 is not going to be cutting anything out. Like, this game, I don't even know if it's a consistent 30. It runs very well, I'd say. Like, I definitely haven't noticed any, like, severe frame drops. I don't know, it's actually totally playable. But I just can never imagine myself getting invested in a game like this other than maybe seeing like what the different stages have to offer, and even then it's like, well, that's what the internet's for. Because the reason why games still have appeal, despite the fact that you can now find out everything about a game through the internet, is because of the gameplay. But there's not a lot of gameplay here. I'm literally just holding down the accelerator. My right hand that I typically use to steer is currently on my lap. Oh fuck, okay, maybe it shouldn't be. But still, it's like, there's so little you have to do. It's such an interesting contrast to the game that I'm going to be doing next as Top Gear Rally. Look forward to that one. Or you've already seen it, depending on how I've uploaded these. Anyway, finish line, and oh no, tough luck again, I imagine. The game's going to be like, oh shit, you didn't finish in the correct place, bastard. Now you get to... Wow, there's a limited number of continues?
I love Atlantis.
Okay, I guess we're gonna do Atlantis one more time. Fine by me, because I get to... I don't know. What's up with that? How did they mess that up? How did a professionally developed game make a mistake that I am able to avoid having, like, 2 weeks worth of experience in a game engine? Like, seriously, that's such a simple thing to fix. Just increase the amount of time between them. It's not that... Unless it's maybe tied to the frame rate? Well, no, 'cause here's the thing. I know that I cannot use my experience using more contemporary game engines to talk about how a game released 20-something years ago was made. This game is not running on Godot 4.3, I can tell you that much. It's not even... It's crazy to think this was released just like 2 years after the Unreal Engine was made. And even then, this was significantly before the Unreal Engine caught on. Again, the Unreal Engine took quite some time to actually become like so popular. And it's strange that the Serious Engine never really became super widely used despite its... oh my god, despite its benefits overall. The Serious Engine is pretty neat from what I've seen. But yeah, something I've learned about like making games is that like you actually spend most of your time just messing around with the editor than actually like programming, if that makes sense. You just gotta get the foundation of the game done, and then you just make levels and stuff. That's what takes up most of your time. And I can clearly tell with this game that the actual making the car go part took like a day's worth of programming, if that. Like, I cannot imagine this game being a severe task for any code, that has to be written. I mean, like, look at this shit. You hold the accelerator, it makes it go forward. There's no physics whatsoever, but it's still kind of fun, I gotta admit. Like, I don't want to have too much fun with this because it's like I really can't, but there is something really satisfying about just kind of going really fast. It's gratifying in of itself. All right, we're going to do one more race, and I think we're going to call it a day. Possibly. Yeah, I think that would work out. But anyway, I'm glad that this game just doesn't have that kind of creep factor. They definitely toned down the arcadiness. I mean, it's still obviously a very coin-op-y arcade game, I don't know why. I really couldn't tell you exactly why I feel so uneasy with the first one. But again, it's probably just because of that weird looping animation and the way it's looped and the music sometimes and the particular sound font choices that they made. And again, that constant rush of anxiety when you're forced to make a choice really quick. You know, this is going to be a weird question, but does anyone remember this arcade racer where you're driving on the Great Wall of China in a Jeep? Or that was one of the cars you could choose. I swear to God, I remember playing that when I was a kid in an arcade. And I have no idea what it is. I could probably find it. Like, just type in, like, random arcade racers. And, like, I mean arcade racers. Not your Need for Speeds. Not your, Blur. No. I mean arcade racer. Like this kind of arcade racer. I'm curious as to whether or not I'd be able to find it. Because that would probably unlock a fucking, you know, it would unlock a core memory. But it's really interesting how sometimes games that really aren't arcade still end up being used in that context. I remember this. I was visiting this. I don't know, this beach town, wherever you want to call it. This place where it's near the beach, and this guy had set up a fucking proper like racing rig with Need for Speed Shift 2 on it, and he would charge people a couple bucks to play it for a bit. And I was like, what? That is so not arcade. I mean, I know it's Need for Speed, but still, that is definitely like the least arcadey Need for Speed game ever made. You know what I mean? It was trying to be a simulation. And it was like proper setup and everything with like super good force feedback and like an H shifter and everything. And it's so weird because it's so anti-arcade, right? Another guy had like Dirt 2 set up, which to be fair, okay, Dirt 2 is a little more of an arcade game, but he still had it set up with like a proper sim racing setup. And that's really weird to me. Let's do one more race and then we'll call it a day. I feel like I don't want it to be too short. So it's just kind of interesting how like actual arcade racers will do that too. They'll have like these big setups, but they'll be exaggerated and kind of bulky. But to be fair, maybe I'm going to assume what happened. He probably had like the guy who did it had like a phase where, because everyone who isn't super serious about sim racing will probably still have a phase where they want to try and get into that kind of setup. You know, like I even had that one, and that's actually why my dad will sometimes use to play Euro Truck Simulator 2, or 1 actually, because his PC can't run 2. But anyway, but I imagine what happened was, I didn't even know he could do that. What I imagine what happened was he probably just had it laying around from that time of his life, and it was just like, well, I'm not using it, but people are coming over, you know, I might as well like get a couple bucks out of it. So you know, that would make sense. It was really cool. Like it moved around and stuff. You ever seen that one video where it's like what happens when you crash in a racing simulator? I think it was Need for Speed Shift 1 in that video where it's like, really, you use Shift 1 for that? Like I love that game, but it's not a full-on simulator. It's definitely not Assetto Corsa. Although I actually kind of like Assetto Corsa just because it's like, no, I think my favorite of the sim type racing games, if that makes sense, would probably have to be Project Cars. No, it has nothing to do with the fact that it was made by Slightly Mad Studio. You know, it's like, oh, it's Need for Speed Shift free. It's really not. But still, and Project Cars 2 was pretty good as well. And then there was Project Cars Free, which was like, Anyway, so back to the game at hand, Cruis'n. It's, well, Cruis'n Exotica is the best one for sure. They're all kind of okay. They're totally junk food games. They're just kind of like, okay, well, hold the accelerator, wiggle the stick around. But there is challenge, to be fair. Like you saw, I fucked up several times. You can lose, but that was usually just because of me not paying attention. I gotta admit, these set pieces are really fucking cool. You can actually get hit by that. Oh my god, this is actually sick. Okay, could the game have more of these things? Because, like, if it does, I'm gonna keep playing this. I mean, I'm gonna have to move over to something else now, but I like how it's just using one of the regular race cars as a traffic vehicle just to save on space. That is really charming, you know, instead of just making a brand new one. So anyway, I think that's gonna do it, yeah, for the Cruis'n games. They're like weirdly fun, even though they're clearly not like the highest effort thing ever or the highest like level of game. I don't know how to put it, but yeah, that was fun. That was Focus on B, the single part, well, not really single part, but yeah, I guess it is, video series where I spent about 20 or so minutes, you know, playing several games in this case, but usually it's just one. And this has been Cruis'n USA, World, and Exotica 96, 98, and 2000 respectively, and 64.